Welcome to Relate to You. Thank you very much for being with us yet another day, yet another episode. For this episode, we're going to discuss something that it was just a thought. It started as a thought, and then it continued on to be a very good conversation. Disclaimer, I guess, like we always say, we're not experts. We are not, your theologians. Please go on and do your own research. But we had a question about, because as many of you know, our church is going into this direction of small groups, right? And the intention of a small group is to spread the gospel, gain souls, right? And so we, as we're moving forward to that, we started talking about how to go about it, I guess, right? How to go about it, and how has the church changed in that process of becoming a church that is spreading the gospel, that is looking for souls, right? That is sensitive to the need of those that are not in the church.
Right.
And so, and we talked about many things, but I think that the most prominent topic was, how are we now selling an experience in a way? Mm-hmm. Are we now so accommodating to the new visitors that the idea of church has changed? And if so, how? Or the idea of the message has changed? And if so, how? Right? So I guess the first question would be, for you, Kiss, what does it mean to be a church that is spreading the gospel, that is focused on cells, on life groups?
I'm 100% in agreement with a church being centered with a goal to preach the gospel. Amen. I think that's our whole purpose. Mm-hmm. I think that was the commission that was given to us when, before the ascension and Jesus goes, back into heaven. He leaves us with the responsibility, go into, Samaria and Judea and all these places and preach the gospel, preach the good news. We have a responsibility to spread this information, this life-saving information, to the rest of the world.
Right.
And I do believe that is something that we shouldn't just do as a church. We should do it as individuals. Mm-hmm. So I'm 100% on that train of like, yes, let's preach the gospel. I think in the last about 9-10 months that I've been working in a different field outside of where I used to work, I've had more opportunities to really interact with people who don't believe like me and have never heard of what I believe in. And so I feel that responsibility and that calling to spread what I know, because at the core of it is, you have information that could save them.
Amen.
Why wouldn't you share? Right? So I'm 100% in favor and in approval of that. Same thing with life groups. I think bringing the message into the homes is vital. I think that we gain so much when we learn how to pray, how to worship, how to talk about Jesus in a home. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the times I think we live Sunday to Sunday.
Right.
And, what goes on during the week in the house is completely, goes out the window. So I think it's important that we bring it into the home. I think for me, what I have seen, though, in churches in general is that in an effort to preach the gospel sometimes and to win souls and to share this extremely important message, that becomes the priority in a lot of what we do. And we miss the bigger picture. Mm. And for me personally, I think we do that in special events. Sometimes when we have these, events, it's really the only time you're going to get people to come to church. If you're not inviting people at church, or if you're not inviting people to come to church at work or somewhere else, usually the times that you can really get them, if they don't want to go to a life group or whatever, it's, hey, we're having an Easter service, or hey, we're having a Christmas service, or hey, we're having a whatever, right? Because, usually
free toys.
Yeah, free toys. There's always something that we have as a hook. And the more that I see it, again, I'm not trying to say this is our church. it's all across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I see this recurring of like, what can we do that would be, and that's the thing. Nobody says like we have a product to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever is gonna say that. But it's that underlying like,
How
what
can
can
we
we
make it
do? How can we make it,
appetizing so that people are like,
right. So down from, and I'm not saying this is a negative thing. I'm simply saying there's a spectrum. So from the parking lot to the entrance to the experience inside to the after, what did we do?
mm-hmm.
Right? And you can Google this. You can Google online, how to, or ideas on how to be more seeker sensitive, or how ideas on how to win souls. There's just different things that you can do. And they're like, have a coffee bar, have free coffee available with donuts and stuff like that. Have gifts for first time visitors
An
with information
experience.
of the church. Again, not saying it's negative, I'm making a point. Ensure that there's clear signs of everything, like where the children's ministry are, where the restrooms are, where the information booths
Everything's
are.
accessible.
Everything's accessible now in service. Make it short sermons, short worship, short announcements. Programmed it. There's really nice videos. The
Mm-hmm.
chairs are comfortable. The lighting is comfortable. The AC
The
is to the
sound.
perfect. The sound is at its perfect peak. And then afterwards, you have, people, leaders ready to, meet people and invite them to different events and stuff like that. And then you have a system, that if you have information on a visitor, what are we going to do? How are we going to
Mm-hmm.
follow up, right? So I don't believe that this is a negative thing to have a system in place. I don't believe it's a negative thing to want to follow up with a visitor and say hi to a visitor,
Mm-hmm.
and to welcome them and be kind and cordial. I don't believe that. However, I don't think that it's the most important thing. This is my opinion. This is where our discussion comes, where maybe our disagreements may come. To me personally, I think that sometimes we focus so much on how to embellish,
Make it pretty.
make it pretty,
Mm-hmm.
so that it could be like, wow, what did we do? We did better than last year. Last year we had a one, sheet cake. This year we had two sheet cakes. No, this year we had a two-tiered cake, and to put it in that way. And I think that we dilute the message when we do that sometimes. I think that when we focus so much on what the experience is and not enough on the message, and the message doesn't stand on its own, then I think that people walk away with, oh, that was a cool service.
I like the lights.
I like the lights. I like the music, or I like the, screens or whatever. But there is really no substance in it. And I think for me, lately, I don't know if I'm getting older. I've told Lula, I'm like, maybe I'm getting like into this like old cranky, like, dang, those kids on my lawn, get them out, like this era in my life. But lately I've become very like el mensaje es suficiente.
Mm-hmm.
Lo único que necesitamos es a Jesucristo y el poder de Dios y stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm coming from. I know I said a lot in that, but where do you agree? Do you disagree with me? Let's go.
I think I think very similarly to you. I do think that there are things that we need to do to accommodate. There are things that we need to do. I think we need to be wise in evaluating. Hey, who is our audience?
Right.
Who is our community? Who are we spreading the gospel to? How do we get to them? I do think that we do right by people in making sure that we cater to their needs, in making sure that we are as accessible as possible, that we are as clear as possible. I absolutely agree with all of that. I think that's wisdom. I do, however, similarly to you, I do think that oftentimes we focused on, is the AC right?
The sound.
is the sound right?
Jeez, the sound.
You know.
Let's take a moment to appreciate our sound technicians, guys. They do
Shout out to
so
you,
much
Misa.
because the amount of hate that they get sometimes when the sound is off is just the stares,
Yeah,
the everything.
come on,
Like,
turning back and where is he? Where is he? Oh my God! This last Sunday, a brother, um, our sound tech Misa wasn't there. He had other things to do, and there was something going on with the sound. And this brother felt the need to just go, hey, hey, and I'm looking at him like, what is this? Like, like, and I just looked at him and I acknowledged. I was like, oh yeah,
I
we
get it.
we get it. We know. And he's like, no, 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 like it's bad. It's bad. And I'm like, we know, brother. We know. Trust and believe. We know. So, but yeah, that was our little vent, guys. That was a little vent. But I do think that when you focus on other things, like I've heard it, oh, hoy la worship no estuvo bien. Hoy so and so como que no, he didn't hit. Oh, el mensaje, well,
So and so preached.
so and so preached. Yes.
That's a big one.
Oh, no, even with your favorite preacher. Ay, hoy como que
He was
he
off.
didn't look my way. You know? He
You
didn't look my way. I've heard that before. He didn't look this way. The whole time he kept over there. And I'm just like, oh, Jesus, last time we checked, it was all about the Bible. It was all about the message. And now we have to cater to people that constantly complain about the lights and constantly complain about the AC and constantly complain about no one said hi to me. Now, I agree. People should be welcoming. People should be, debemos de ser esa gente
We
que
should be
dice,
excellent.
excellent.
Sound should sound good.
Yeah.
AC, we shouldn't have
Should
the
be
place
working.
burning. Yes.
We should be excellent at what we do. I think God is always looking for excellency in everything. Y si todos lo hiciéramos, esto es para Dios, sería muy diferente. Pero I do agree that it's very hard to navigate that very thin line of, are we now selling an experience? Are we now more worried about si se van a sentir cómodos, si van a regresar, versus did they hear the message? Where their lives, where was his need or her need met that day with a good message, an uplifting message, or a message of conviction? A ver, ¿por qué cuando te vas a Google a decirle, how do I make my church grow? No te dice, preach about this. Preach about, preach about sin, because that's very correlated to salvation. Preach about the end of times, because guess what?
Jesus
is coming. And so, no, más bien te dan una lista de las cosas que puedes hacer para que la gente se quede, para que la gente disfrute, and so I do think that, and then we see it. Now, I don't think we do that every single Sunday.
No.
Right? But we see that more when big events are around. When big events come up, it's like, and we're all scrambling to look for the perfect lighting and to look for the perfect screens and to look for the perfect videos and to look for the perfect songs and to look for, todo eso y todo eso. And then se llega el mensaje, y el mensaje can be powerful and it's good and it fuels you with that. Pero mientras ya pusiste una hora de videos, una hora de cosas que you're like, I mean, that was good, pero me quedé con hambre de escuchar el mensaje.
I think for me, a lot of where my perspective is changing has a lot to do with the fact that I'm no longer working in church. Because when I was in the mix of it, I'll be honest, it was the most important thing. That lighting was the most important thing. The whatever we were doing, was the most important thing. I've had 9 months, actually a little bit more. I stopped working now, maybe almost 11 months, not working there, that my whole thing is different. And we've experienced it, dude. There's times that I'm like, qué bonito fue el servicio. And you're like, dude.
Don't even talk to me.
Don't even talk to me. This happened. This and this happened. And I'm like, but it was a great service. Yeah. And those things brought perspective to me. And I saw and felt a lot of like, yes, while we strive for excellence, a lot of the times we as the workers, as the laborers, and in this part of the service or of what we're trying to do, we focus so much on those things, and we don't even realize that a lot of the people don't need much.
No.
don't need much to all they're really, dude, el poder de Dios cayó en el servicio.
Debe de ser suficiente.
The way God worked in this, and that's enough. And meanwhile, it's like, dude, the flowers weren't it, you know? And I think that that's where I've been right now, you know. I've been really reading the Gospels lately, and John has been fascinating me right now. And you know, Jesus met needs, and in that sense, I can see, okay, there's a purpose behind meeting a need, because otherwise he would have never fed the 5,000. He would have never healed the sick. He would have never met needs. You know, there were obvious things that he did to, I wouldn't say the word accommodate in that sense, but he met the need, you know? And I do think sometimes we meet a need when
we need to.
When we obviously have a service or a special service, we're meeting a need. But there were also times that he said, no, ustedes nomás están buscando el pan. And I'm just going to preach. There were some things that he said that was so tough to hear. It's not enough for you to just, you know, commit adultery and be like, that's the worst thing I can do. Where did you lust in your mind?
Yeah.
And so now the standard was higher. So I believe that, you know, Jesus was constantly trying to break things, you know, even in the, and I think that that's probably where it convicted me recently, because I was reading where he flips the tables. And the rage and the anger, you don't really see Jesus with, you know, that aspect of him. You know, you see Jesus as loving, you hear of Jesus as graceful, but there was a moment where he got angry, and to the point that he's like, this is my Father's house, this is the place of worship, this is the place of holiness, and you guys are making it into a den of thieves. You're selling things here that is creating an environment so that the purpose of what we're trying to do is not met. And it was so much jealousy in him in that way that he's destroying everything. And I feel like sometimes, you know, we're losing that. We're more focused on what are we selling, what are we providing, what are we doing, and not so much of what is the purpose of the temple, what is the purpose of why we're here. And it's hard to find the fine line sometimes, because, you know, I've been in different ministry positions, and so, you know, it's hard for you to tell, you know, un decir, you know, a social media technician, you know, what matters most is the message, and all the other things don't matter. Of course it matters. Of course the ministry matters. Of course what we do matters. But and you know, Eli used to say this a lot, when we're not willing to get away from the program, when we're not willing to, like, detach ourselves from, you know, the event, the plan, that is where I think shoot ourselves in the foot, because now we missed the opportunity. And I guess my argument is, why is simple wrong now? Why is simple not? Why do we have to do something big?
Why is more more?
Why more?
Why don't we have the same mentality of less is more sometimes?
Exactly. You know?
Yeah.
Like, and you know what? I think a lot of the times it's not even, that's where my issue comes. It's not even visitors that are the ones that are like, we want this. Somos nosotros los que estamos allí por tantos años.
Y es que la verdad, si te pones a pensar, un visitante le va, o sea, no le va a importar, le da igual.
I've never been here.
Exactly.
I don't know what happened last year. Son los que están allí. Hey, dude, this wasn't it. You should have been for, you know, the Thorn experience, man. That one was it. You know, you should have been here for that Christmas service. That one was it. Yeah. A visitor doesn't know.
Yeah, a visitor doesn't know. Entonces, maybe that's why we're like, why do we hang on to the grand
glory
of
the past?
Yeah, when it's like, los visitantes, lo que les des van
con
a apreciar
amor.
Con amor, lo que les des con amor. I think what goes a longer way is the way you make them feel as they come in. Are they welcome?
Your intentionality.
Yeah. Do they feel love? Do they see love within the brethren already?
Your genuinity.
There? You know, I was listening recently to a missionary in Japan, And I mean, it's a very long documentary, 3 episode. Um, and so, but there was a time, there was something that one of the girls said, because Christianity in Japan is, it's difficult. Maybe not as difficult as in other areas, but it's difficult. And this girl was sharing how she came to know of the Lord as an exchange student in, I don't know which Western nation, but in one of the Western nations. And she was sharing how the first thing that struck her as, wow, I want some of this, was how loving they were with each other. Not just with the new ones, but with each other. And obviously she comes from a culture where they're very detached from each other. Japanese culture is a very, like, you are on your own, I'm on my own, we don't meddle with no one, do you, right? They have a hard time with that. And so she comes to a church where not only is that a different culture, but also they're very genuine about the love they have for each other. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que ve un visitante between the leaders and the other people there? Do we look like family?
Do we love each other?
Do we love each other? And if we love each other, are we being loving for those new ones? Or do we pass someone because he looks different? Do we pass by someone because, oh, she I know her, but she hasn't been here in a while? Do we pass by someone because, oh, last time que le dije hi, me hizo una carota? They could have had a bad time, a bad day. Try again. I think is like, we're so afraid of rejection, we take it personal.
Yes.
Y la verdad es que si no van al servicio, it's not for, no nos están haciendo reject a nosotros.
No.
They're rejecting
The
God.
Lord.
They're rejecting the Lord. Si alguien va y se queja de que el sonido no estuvo bien, that's just their excuse to say, I'm not coming back. That's just their excuse to justify themselves for not receiving the Lord, for not receiving the message. You know what? I couldn't focus on the preaching because the whole time I kept looking at the reeds that were not hanged correctly. Uno estaba más arriba que el otro. And that's all I focused on the whole time. And I mean, I'm thinking, wow, so you truly, truly, honestly missed the whole message just because you couldn't move past the idea that someone had a tiny mistake and y los colgó chuecos.
To me, also, I think, I know it's going to sound like we're just complaining, guys, but what bothers me sometimes when people complain is like, ¿y tú qué estás haciendo?
Like, are you the solution?
Where are you being the solution in this?
Yeah.
Despite of what we're talking about, I am 100% an advocate for ministry. 100%.
Yeah.
I believe in it. I have a conviction in it that we should be serving in ministry in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why people complain when they have no responsibility whatsoever. You are being a recipient of what is being laid out for you, what people are working to do. For example, I'm right now, I'm in children's ministry. Children's ministry right now is my life in that sense. And sometimes I remember, hearing the complaints of like, los chiquillos están llore. And I remember that a couple years ago, we pushed, we need a nursery. And there was like, well, we don't have that many kids. Guys, right now our church is like a baby factory. Dude. I can't even tell you how many babies there are in the church.
Yeah.
And yes, when you have 3 chiquillos crying, you're like, oh my God, like, thank the Lord we have a nursery.
We met the need.
It's the same thing with children's ministry. But the problem is that we have so few and overworked teachers that are taking care of your children and they're in need of help.
Yeah.
And we go to church and we're, I'm okay with just going to service and I worshiped and I got the message and I left. I have no ties. I have been there with you leave and there's this freedom and I don't have to go and I don't have to be anywhere and I don't have to meet a meeting. I get it. But entonces no te quejes. No te quejes de nada, absolutamente nada. Porque if you're not being part of the working process of fixing it, and that's where I'm at right now with children's ministry. I want children's ministry to be what it needs to be once I have my children.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that it can be what I envision is if I help in the process of being part of the
Right,
improvements.
right.
Si yo no me meto, si yo no sacrificio mi tiempo y de mí, I won't see change. And so on one end, it's, are we serving? On another end, it's why are we complaining so much about things that don't have anything to do with the purpose of why we're really here? And then in another end, there's like, are you really even seeking souls? Like, to me, it's like we work so hard to make an event or whatever. Did you really talk to someone? Did I really talk to someone? Did I really make an effort?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think sometimes I ask myself that of like, who did we engage with?
Yeah.
Who did we connect with?
Yeah. Maybe that should be the approach. Maybe the approach should be, you know what? I'm going to let all my leaders know you need to give me a report of 3 people you talked to that day, that service.
100%.
And everyone has to give, pastor in this case would be a report to pastor. Hey, pastor, I talked to so-and-so, I talked to so-and-so, and I talked to so-and-so.
And I'm going to follow it.
And I'm going to follow up. They
Invited
have
them
this
to my
need,
life
you
group.
know, invite them to my life group.
Because I'm a part of one.
Maybe that should be the active part of this is what the service is going to be about. Let's forget a little bit. Not all, because yes, we still have to give some, presentation, but let's give priority to, like you said, are we engaging with the people we invite? Are we even inviting someone?
¿Cuántas veces no hemos tenido un special service and that Sunday it's packed? And then the Sunday after, like, ¿y dónde están todos?
Mm-hmm.
No solamente los visitantes no vinieron, pero ni los que
Hasta
vienen.
la gente, la
hasta
misma membresía.
Los regulars, they're not even here.
Yeah.
And
it's just, it's hard, it's very, very hard. I think it's a very thin, very, very thin line of presenting an experience versus presenting the gospel. I think it's a very, very fine line. And I think también to give some benefit of the doubt of the churches that, do that, and the churches and the leadership at these churches that have this hard, that have a hard time with that fine line. I think también it's the fact that we live in a very, what's the word? We live in a very, in a extraordinary focused society. We focus on the extraordinary. I need that extraordinary experience. I need that extraordinary moment that's going to turn my life around. And we don't focus enough on the fact that God works in the ordinary también. Not just the extraordinary. We're looking for like, cuando Moisés va a abrir los mares otra vez. We're looking on those big miracles.
The bread.
Pero no nos enfocamos en que no, Dios trabaja en lo ordinario. Dios trabaja en el everyday, moment to moment events, and we want to experience God in the extraordinary. God move so that so that I heal, or move so that this happens, move so that I see this, move, tell me an audible yes. Y no nos enfocamos en que a veces what you're going through, that's your yes or that's your no. What someone else is going through and it's ministering to you, that's your answered prayer. And so I feel como que también, because we have that attitude of like, we're going to focus on the extraordinary, we bring that también to services. It has to be extraordinary. Now, I don't think there's nothing wrong with being excellent, with having, for example, the sound technician, we wanting to give excellent sound. The musicians with wanting to be excellent, an excellent performance, and todo, los cantores, los de multimedia, los ministers, pastor, even with his message. Yeah, excellency in everything we do. Y para Dios siempre va a ser the ideal, and the what we should be striving for. But I do think a veces we that excellency turns into, did everyone like it?
Exactly. I mean, and again, we're not trying to attack systems. The Bible has shown multiple examples where systems needed to be in place. You see it in the moment when they were in the desert and Moses was being bombarded with a lot of the people's complaints
Mm-hmm.
and needs, and they advise him, you need to set up, I believe it was 12 men that were going to be in
Like
charge
council, yeah.
of, certain group of people. And so systems are in place. And in the book of Acts, you see them that, there's the issue with the widows, and they're like, oh no, we have to
There's a
set something in
need.
place. There's a
Yeah.
need. So I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a system. There shouldn't be a greedy team or an ushers team or a children's ministry. No. What I'm saying is, when we miss the purpose of what we're doing, we miss the point of what the commission is.
Mm-hmm.
The commission is to preach the gospel. How do you preach the gospel if you are, serving in a ministry? By doing that ministry in an excellent way,
Yeah.
but also being flexible enough that if something changes, if a plan changes, you're going to ride with that, and you're going to be like, but it's okay, because at the end of the day, what are we here for? To love, to spread the gospel, to be of service. A lot of the times, our pastor would say, if you're a leader, you should be feeding yourself during the week.
Right.
And Sundays really should be the time where you take an opportunity to pray for that visitor that came for the first time, or someone else that's in need. And I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes I'm like, I don't think about who needs prayer. I think about me. I need my encounter. I need my breakthrough. And so aún en eso, like, fallamos,
Yeah.
And so I think, what we're trying to say out of this, again, it's not just the vent. It's not just the complaining or whatever. In reality is, what can we do in our means to bring it back? And lately I've been getting this a lot from different people, as far as, negativity, and this isn't working, and this isn't right, and blah blah blah, and why is the church like this, and blah blah blah. And while I believe, well, what are you doing as part of the purpose? I also believe I am not in a position to fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
I can only serve within my means in the ministry that I'm serving. Currently, right now, I am in the front desk for children's ministry and a potential teacher for the little ones. That's it. I can't fix the grand issues of what's, going on with the church, but in that I'm going to be excellent, and in that I'm going to do what I can. So for example, children's ministry, if I have a class with the little ones, I'm going to use that 1 hour to preach the gospel in whatever way I can. What is this little light of mine singing a song, whether it's we're going to do an activity, whether it's I'm going to show you guys how to worship, we raise our hands. I'm going to preach the gospel in that way. You're an usher, preach the gospel in that way. Be ready for the person in the parking lot that maybe never even walked into the church because they're in the car the entire time because they couldn't go. Be ready to preach the gospel as an usher outside. You're a greeter, you're a singer, you're in your singing. Know the lyrics. Make sure that you're on point. I'm sorry. Hey, I was a praise team singer, and I kid you not, a lot of the times we slacked in that area, and you're like, okay, we practice, and then come Sunday, you don't know the words, and then, sorry, the person in that section who also should be excellent missed, or the computer is not on point. Know your lyrics. Preach the gospel through your excellence. Special events coordinators, same thing. Yes, it's important with the flowers and the lights and the screens and the gifts and the everything. But how are you preaching the gospel? If it's through that video, let it be the best video. If it is through that gift, let it be filled with verses and information that is going to help these people. I guess what I'm saying is, don't lose the purpose of what we're doing, because Jesus is coming soon. And we can't afford to miss opportunities. And I feel like that this is our opportunity.
Yes.
We use this podcast to try to, yes, discuss and banter and all of that. But in the core of it, I guess sometimes I sleep well at night because I'm like, Señor, estoy haciendo algo. Estoy haciendo algo. Y aunque es pequeño, we don't even have that 100 subscribers, Lord.
Yes.
But you know what? I'm doing something small in the midst of everything that I have going on in my life to preach the gospel,
to talk about you,
to find the purpose within. Again, you may disagree, you may not like this controversial maybe episode, but that's my point of view.
I agree. I do think that we're not giving ourselves a pat on the shoulders because, oh my God, we're doing something. But I do think that if you want change, you need to be that change. As cliche as that sounds, I do think that si nos vamos a quejar de algo, better be because we have a solution on the other hand, because we have a solution on the other end of our complaint. I don't think there's nothing wrong with, hey, I've noticed this, and that. However, I can be of service to fix that issue. Um, Going back to my example of that brother that told me, hey, there's no sound, I motioned to him for him to come over so he could help me with that sound, seeing as, there was a need. And he said, oh, I don't know. I'm like, okay. So a lot of the times we're very prompt to single out the mistakes. Pero entonces se viene la need of volunteers, se viene la need of the actual manpower, and it's like, oh, I'm busy, or I have a life, or, I don't work with that schedule because I need to be told, in months in advance, weeks in advance, so I can prepare myself. And, you know, unfortunately, attitudes like that vamos a encontrar en todos lados,
Claro.
in every ministry, in every church,
In the world,
in every,
yes.
even at our jobs. Pero a veces es triste porque el trabajo que hacemos lo hacemos para Dios, o debería al menos de ser para Dios, y nos morimos en un vaso de agua porque Lacey no sirvió, porque so and so preach y pastor was out,
Because a
porque
new change is happening.
within the
Goodness.
structure of the leaders, por cualquier cosita, y nos queremos hundir y sentimos que el mundo se va, is caving in on us. And I think that's where a lot of times we struggle. Y por eso es que a veces nos enfocamos en the big things, the big events, porque se nos ha olvidado que es la Biblia lo que va a hablar. Es Dios quien salva vidas, no nosotros.
No.
Las almas son de Dios. Nosotros nomás las traemos, propiciamos un momento para que la presencia de Dios caiga y quien lo reciba, o más bien quien lo va a recibir, que lo reciba. Y pero a veces pensamos que ya por las luces la gente se va a quedar, que ya porque le hiciste bien la gente se va a quedar, que ya porque el message was short and sweet la gente se va a quedar. And then, como dices tú, lo and behold, se viene next week and the church is sort of empty.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we say this, we also agree that we need to be whether we need to be the change, that we need to be more proactive, that even Kez and I, we miss some of the opportunities. I know that I'm on the other end. I'm on the end of organizing. I'm on the end of yo también me he ahogado en vasos de agua porque ciertas cosas no pasan como las planeé, o porque ciertas cosas se me salen de las manos. Entonces yo entiendo ahora esa perspectiva de, oh, but the service was good. Oh, yeah, but if only you knew, only you knew the heaps I went through, or the heaps we went through. Entonces, I agree que yo también he sido parte del problema, pero conviction is always there at my door, and I thank God that he gives me the discernment to be like, okay, come in, conviction. Let me open the door.
And for the love of God, get involved.
Get involved,
honestly,
guys.
Get involved. Like, for example, with children's ministry right now, just once a month, 1 hour.
Please, guys, if you're interested,
that's it.
Children's ministry is your ministry to go to.
That's it. Like, if you don't want to, open up a life group, go to one. Just join one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much need in the church. And if you're saying, no, I don't want to go in ministry because I don't want to be in leadership and I don't want to submit and I don't want to do this and I don't want to deal with attitudes, let me tell you something. The reality of our walk with God is that we deny ourselves. It is a sacrificial, constantly, like, less of me, more of him, which means less of my pride, less of my convenience, less of my whatever that may be. So yes, unfortunately, ministry is sacrificial. Sometimes you might have an idea, you might want it to go a certain way, y te tienes que someter and say, aunque estoy con disagreement con el líder, porque el líder dijo, vamos a hacerlo de esta manera, y yo lo quiero de esta manera, tu posición es de someterte. Igual como nos sometemos a Dios y lo que Él nos pide de nosotros, all of it is a learning lesson for you to understand what we're supposed to do. And so 100%, if you want to grow as a person and in your walk with God, get in ministry. Amen. And if you're not going to get in ministry, get on your knees and pray for those that are. Pray for the leadership. Pray for the pastors, the ministerial board, the organizers, the people that are working tirelessly to try to do the best that they can. Don't sit, don't judge. ¿Por qué hicieron esto? ¿Por qué hicieron lo otro? Y otra vez hicieron esto. Y el año pasado también cocinaron mashed potatoes and they should have done it this way. Get on your knees and pray, God, first of all, take this attitude away, but help those that are in leadership so that they can have the wisdom to follow through with whatever it is that you're putting
Amen.
in place.
Amen.
And so that's the end of
That's
our
the end of our
podcast.
conversation.
So we will talk to you guys later and vent later and see you guys on the next one.
Bye.